Town Meeting preview. It's coming to you live on Thursday, August 6th at 6 p.m. We're located here at PACTV Studios, and once again, I'm joined by Assistant Town Moderator Nicole Manfredi. Also in the studio this evening, Julie Thompson. She is the Executive Director for PACTV, and also this evening joining us, we have two representatives from OTI, and they are supporting us with the V-Voter application. The purpose of a town meeting preview is to provide all of you with an overview of the motions. This is my 30th year as Plymouth Town Moderator. I've sponsored a preview before each town meeting. I know that many of you have not attended one, and hopefully you've watched one, but this evening we are going to make an effort for you to understand why it's important for us to be attending and participating in these previews, because there's a lot of good information that you'll receive that'll be helpful in the town meeting for Monday evening. We're going to continue tonight with our grand experiment in trying to put together a virtual town meeting for Plymouth. During the preparation, a number of people asked, what are we going to do if there is bad weather or a power outage? So we took care of that on Tuesday. We spoke to the powers that be, we ordered bad weather, and we knew enough to postpone the preview until tonight. So we hope that it's fit into your schedule as we're going to continue now and begin with a roll call vote. We did that on Monday night. For those of you that are watching through PACTV, town meeting members have logged in not only to the Zoom webinar platform, but they're also logged into a V-Voter platform from OTI Technologies. And so we're going to be calling that up on the screen so that town meeting members will have 1 minute in which to indicate that they are present. We know the number that have signed in, but we want to take this roll call vote this evening for town meeting members. It's one of several that we'll take as we continue to test what we have available. Now, we got a lot of good feedback after Monday's first practice presentation night. One town meeting member told me that he was unable to vote the first two times, and then he realized that he needed to enlarge his V-Voter screen. So that might be something, if you didn't see that in the training video when it was mentioned, for those of you that are showing both the Zoom webinar and the V-Voter on your screen when you get ready to vote, you may want to enlarge that to make it easier for you to vote. We're going to call up as soon as they're ready in the studio for this first vote, this first roll call vote, and then we'll afterwards show it by precinct. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for that to come up, I want to mention that some of the other things that have come up in preparation for tonight, someone asked about could they present a new article? And the answer is no. The selectmen set the warrant, and once it has been established, there are no new articles. There can be new motions on an existing article. And I'll just also add that this morning at our motions meeting, Marlene McCollum, the Assistant Town Manager, reminded us that the warrant will be closing next Friday for the fall the fall annual town meeting. So for those of you that may wish to place an article on that warrant, that's when it'll close. Now, we're seeing up on our screen the icon for the roll call vote. It says, please select one and press the green vote button to indicate you're present. So at this time, if we're ready, we're going to begin the vote, and you'll have 1 minute to vote, and we're going to start the timer momentarily, and then we'll take your vote. And this will be for all town meeting members. We're not going to keep it open, and we're going to start now. So town meeting members now are indicating whether they are present. We'll see how that compares to what we're showing as people who have signed in. We're down to 48 seconds. We're going to take time that we need. Now, the other night when people were using the V voter application, they also said that they were asking to speak and it didn't come up. So I would remind people that if for any reason you're having difficulty with your V voter platform, please call the help desk. And town meeting members got a sheet. It says in big boldface type, help desk. So the phone number is on that for town meeting members, and it's available for town meeting members to be able to call that. We're down to 12 seconds. So we hope the help desk is open and is going to be open on Monday at an early time. But right now, 2-1, and we're done voting. And we'll see that we currently have 66 town meeting members who are indicating that they are present. And throughout town meeting, as we vote, we'll be scrolling through the precincts. And you'll see we're beginning with precincts 1, 2, and 3. We're now in 4, 5, and 6. We need a quorum of 90. So as we go through the evening and hopefully as other people join us, we'll take another roll call. But we're doing this in part to practice. If any of you were unable for some reason to complete the roll call, we ask you to call so that someone here can help you with your question about indicating on the roll call that you are present. We're scrolling through the precincts. You'll see 10, 11, and 12. And we're going to finish up with the final 3 precincts, and they'll be shown 13, 14, and 15. So we've shown all the precincts, and I'll ask Nicole, how does that compare to people who have logged in? Do we know?
We have 80 town meeting members are currently logged in.
So we currently have 80 town meeting members who have logged in. 66 indicated that they're present. Of the remaining number who did not indicate, if you did not want to indicate, that's your choice. But if you did want to indicate you're present and were unable to do so, please let us know and see if you can be assisted in following with the V voter application. Now, before we begin with the main part of the preview, which is to go over motions, we do have a couple of presentations tonight that are going to supplement Monday night's presentation. You may recall on Monday evening, the Plymouth School Committee was scheduled at 7 o'clock to deliberate and make decisions about the coming school year. Some town meeting members have indicated that they would be interested in hearing from our superintendent of schools, since town meeting votes on the bottom line of the budget. You're reminded we don't have line item authority, but we do vote on the bottom line. So we're going to hear a presentation, and after, if you have any questions, specifically as it relates to the budget, since that's what we'll be voting on. We don't want to get into all the issues related to the coming school year, but specifically impact on the budget. So we once again welcome Dr. Gary Maestas. He's the superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools. And Gary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for me. And
we're going to unmute Dr. Maestas.
Can you hear me?
And we're just...
Gary can keep talking.
Gary can keep talking. Go ahead, Gary.
Right.
We can't hear you in here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and town meeting members. It's good to be here with you tonight. Just to give you an overview of what's happening in the fall for school here in Plymouth. And then I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what's happened with the budget going back to November, and then we'll get to current time. So Monday night, the school committee met, and we had a very long deliberation over what we were going to be doing for the Plymouth Public Schools for the upcoming year. The school committee had the option of looking at 3 different models that we could go with, and these are models that we had to choose from. This is brought down from the Department of Education, and these models were discussed, and the school committee did make a decision. That the first model was a face-to-face model where we would actually have kids come back to school, and we actually had to make a decision. The school committee had to make a decision whether we would, for that model, if we would go 6-foot distancing, which is what the standard is in the CDC recommendation, or go with 3-foot distancing. Now, the Department of Education has provided a great deal of information which indicates that 3-foot distancing would be allowable in schools in Massachusetts. So we discussed that quite a bit. We then discussed the next option, which is a hybrid option, where we would have students that would come to school for 2 days a week and study at home for 3 days a week. And that's known as the hybrid option. And that would significantly reduce the amount of kids that are in our schools by, it'll actually reduce it by 1/2. So the school committee felt adamant that they did not want to do the 3-foot distancing. 6-foot distancing is just would not allow us to, occupy our schools to capacity. It just would not work having desks 6 feet apart. And that would, to actually go with face-to-face would create some significant transportation issues for us, because the Department of Education has sent out a mandate that indicates that if we're going to transport, we have to transport with 3-foot distancing in our buses, which would mean that we would take a bus with a capacity that's over 50 and reduce it to a capacity of 23. So the maximum we can actually fit in our buses is 23. So a bus moving forward will be window aisle, and they will be assigned seats. So that's pretty much how transportation would work. So then we also discussed a third option, which is full remote, meaning that students would, go to school like they did the last 4 months of school, where education would be delivered completely at home. And that deliberation took quite some time. It was a lengthy discussion. The school committee finally settled on a motion and a vote that the Plymouth Public Schools would begin the school year with the hybrid option. But there is a caveat with that particular motion. The school committee did indicate that in the event that there is a change in the COVID positive number for the community of Plymouth, they would reconvene. Or if we did see an uptick of COVID cases that were in the schools, they would immediately convene a meeting and they would cause action or have a motion to change. Keep in mind, the Plymouth Public Schools is prepared to move or migrate from option A to option 3. So we would be prepared to, if things get better and things look, favorable for us to have a face-to-face option, we would migrate to that. If things don't get better and they actually take a turn to the worst part of this dilemma that we're dealing with, we would actually be able to go remote. The students that are going to be studying remotely will be studying with a learning management system. That's a curriculum that is designed and built by vendors that the state has endorsed. We will be choosing a vendor to be able to help with that. That information came out yesterday. And there are 5 different options that we can go with. We will make a decision early next week and send that information to parents. We're thinking that we may offer our own option and have our own teachers perhaps offer that at the elementary level, but we have not decided that yet. That will take place early next week. I will be sending out a correspondence to our families early next week to be able to communicate exactly how we're going to migrate. One thing I did mention to the school committee, and I want the community at large to really grasp this information, is everything that we're presenting is as quickly as we can get out to our families, because there are a lot of things behind the scenes. Even, like I said, this information on our vendors that we could use for the face-to-face is very cumbersome, and we got it yesterday. But we do have a lot of information that we'll be sending out. I'll be doing videos that will explain a lot of detail. We'll be doing some Zoom calls with parents to kind of take their questions. But we hope that the information we can get to parents is clear, and they can get an idea of what they would like to be engaging in. We will also send out a letter Monday with that information, Monday or Tuesday with that information, but we're also going to need a survey from parents to determine what option they're going to take, whether it's the hybrid option or the remote option, and also if they need transportation. So that's kind of a very quick overview of what we're doing moving forward, and that's as of today. I'd also like to provide a little bit of information on the budget. As you all know, we went through the budget process. The committee heard our budget first week in December. They also had the opportunity to provide follow-up to that meeting, and a motion was made to approve the budget as presented. It then went to the Board of Selectmen. That was successfully approved. Then it went to Finance Committee, and that was approved with a lot of discussion on all areas and on all three different boards. As you know, there was a meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and Board of Selectmen asked the town departments and the school department to look at reducing the budget. We did with the school committee, and we did reduce our budget by $1.9 million. Now, keep in mind, the budget that was built pre-COVID. So we had no idea we were going to be doing this. We didn't know we needed PPE. We didn't know we needed shields and all the devices that we're having to put in place. But I would like the community at large, primarily town meeting members tonight, to know that we have had a great deal of assistance from the county of Plymouth, and that the county has actually been able to reimburse the school department for all the PPE and continually looking at reimbursing us for PPE and for other items that we had to purchase, cleaning equipment, cleaning devices, air purification systems that we have ordered. All that stuff is being reimbursed, and we are being helped greatly by those funds. Those funds came out to initially to $225 per student, and we have indications that there will be some additional funds associated with the county money. But keep in mind, there have been a number of other grants that we have applied for that will help us to purchase technology. We have ordered a number of Chromebooks for our students. Those have been ordered, those will be coming in, but all of that has been made available through significant grants from the federal government and the state. So a lot of people have asked me, well, how is this cut impacting you as COVID rolls out? We have been able to manage those expenses with COVID through subsidy, and it's been a positive situation for us. Grateful to Lynne Barrett and her team for actually arranging all of these opportunities. But it is very positive at this point. Again, we haven't run into a lot of difficulty with what we need to purchase. So, we did cut 16 positions in the school district, and some town meeting members have emailed me asking about those positions. What we landed up doing is freezing the budget around the end of March, and it's probably closer to the time that we exited school, March 13th. I gave my finance office a directive of we were not going to hire people, and we were only going to spend for essential items that we needed to bridge the gap between the close of school and summertime. We were able to do that. We were also able to, people that retired and people that were, sometimes jobs become vacated because people move districts. We were able to not hire 13 of those people that left or retired, and we did lay off an additional 3 members, 2 that were support people, another one was an administrator. But we have been able to do classroom audits and take a look at where we could redesign, restructure operations in some of our programs to be able to eliminate some positions. It's been a very difficult exercise. It took us close to 3 weeks to do that. But at this point, I'm here tonight to report that the budget was cut. We have adjusted appropriately. And tonight, as far as budgets going for 21, we have some challenges ahead. But I have a great deal of faith that we will be getting additional subsidy from the federal government to bridge the gap between what we built as a budget and what we need to manage COVID. And that's a lot. I mean, we have hand sanitizers, we have baskets for every classroom for cleaning. It's just a great deal that we have purchased to be able to bridge the gap between now and when we can place that next order. So with that, Mr. Moderator, I believe I provided an overview of the school operation and also of the budget since December. Thank you.
Thank you. That is Dr. Gary Maestas. He is the superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools, at least for the present time. And you can ask your questions of him. We don't see any right now in the V-Voter application, so we'll continue, and I'll invite you again to ask questions when we come to Article 7 of the annual town meeting, which will be to review the motions for the budget. I want to mention that this evening we still have 4 town meeting members who have come in under a town meeting member on Precinct 1. So there'll be a notice sent out again. But if you are not seeing your name registered, it may be because you logged in under someone else's name. I also want to mention a couple other things. We have, since Monday night, received lots of suggestions about how to proceed with town meeting. And one of the concerns that were raised by town meeting members was that there was a request for the video feed of town meeting members. And in reviewing that with our professional team today, we were reminded that video is memory intensive and bandwidth intensive. And it would be one thing if we had control over the equipment for all town meeting members, as well as for their environment in order to ensure there wouldn't be interference. But we don't, and it's been recommended by the team that for a number of reasons that we proceed as we have been. I want people to know that I have checked with other municipalities in the Commonwealth, and I've been told that the standard for the town meetings has been to utilize the Zoom webinar and not to have video. So I invite town meeting members to look at some of the other town meetings. For example, in Milton, Lexington, Winchester, Natick. If you go to their websites, watch the videos, you'll see that town meeting members are identified by name as they are in Plymouth. We welcome any suggestions. If there's someone who has a lot of technology experience and they think that they can come up with a solution as to that concern, we welcome that. We will certainly, after this town meeting, be reviewing all of the technology in order to determine how we can better present town meeting to our town meeting members and the community. But I did want you to know that currently the process that we're following is the standard that has been followed statewide. And I want to also express our appreciation certainly to PACTV and to OTI and to Nicole Manfredi, the Assistant Town Moderator, and all the people who have been working with her. For many people, this has been full-time work over the past few weeks. I'd also like to just mention that as we go through the motions, you're reminded that motions have to be within the scope of the article. So we had some proposals that we add leasing to some of the motions, but the warrant didn't give a warning to people that leasing might be considered. So we've ruled those out of order. So we need to look at the scope of the article in order to determine what we can put in a motion. We also have to make sure that the motion is within the authority of town meeting. If, in fact, it's within the authority of the select board, then we can't act on something that has been a power granted to another branch of government. When you want to make a motion on the budget to increase or decrease, we ask that you specify not only the amount, but the item. And there are various presentations of the budget, but in your motion packet, there's a presentation of the budget according to subcommittees. And if you look at the first subcommittee A group, we'll be going through items 1 through 13. That would be a way in which to then put together your motion. I've received a number of motions. It's getting late to receive motions. There are actually a few today that I received that may not have made it into the most recent revision. Tonight, 25 minutes before we came on air, a new motion packet was emailed to all town meeting members. For those of you that may not have seen the email and have a printer, you may want to print it, but I will highlight a number of the changes since you received the packages and hard copies in snail mail. We'll continue to update motions as we receive them and review them, and there'll probably be a final motion package emailed to you on Monday. But in this packet, some of the changes are highlighted to make it easy for you. Again, a reminder that borrowing requires not only the review of town council, but the review of bond council. So again, if anyone chooses to consider amending a motion relating to borrowing, we may not have enough time to do that. And at this time, I'm going to begin with some of the motions and then come back to another presentation. So if you look at your packet of motions, the first one was that Mr. Canty moves that in all sessions this annual town meeting be commenced and conducted remotely by means of the Zoom webinar and OTI virtual voting platforms. I did receive a motion to amend this. I reviewed it with town council. This particular motion has been drafted in a manner to comply with the statutory requirements under Senate number 2680, section 52(8)A, which is the section that authorizes representative town meetings to participate remotely. It's a majority vote, and with all of our motions, we receive a recommendation from the Advisory and Finance Committee. I'm going to move to Kevin Canty, if we can at this time, and listen to what Kevin has to say on behalf of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Welcome, Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Mr. Triffletti. So the Advisory and Finance Committee did take a vote as to whether town meeting should or should not approve a virtual town meeting at this time. In light of the ongoing pandemic and the need for the town to have a budget in order to set the tax rate and to appropriately allocate funding throughout the school year and throughout the fiscal year to keep the town running at a time when so many things in our community and our lives are up in the air. It's important that the town meeting go forward and that a budget be put in place and that we address the business of this town in the best way that we are able to do so. Given the ongoing pandemic, it is not presently, and the recent increase in cases throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it would not presently be wise to engage in a physical town meeting, hybrid or strictly physical. I know some people would like to see that happen, but unfortunately, this isn't about any of our individual opinions on this. This is about everyone. There are many people that are town meeting members that are in particularly vulnerable groups themselves, or may have family members who or others that they would expose through the chain if they were to become infected from the virus by participating in a physical town meeting or a hybrid town meeting. The only way to ensure that town meeting does not contribute the spread of the pandemic in this community is to do so virtually. We may not be able to do everything we'd like to do with a virtual town meeting. We won't be able to see town meeting members make their arguments and debates. We won't be able to have some of the other things that we're used to in a town meeting. It's going to be very different than when we meet at Plymouth North. However, what's most important is that we get this done and that we are able to serve the town in the capacity that we are able to do so. None of us asked to be handed this situation. None of us anticipated that this town meeting would look this way, particularly when Advisory and Finance, the Select Board, town government as a whole was preparing for this for months and months before this happened. But here we are, and all we can do is do the best we can with with the hand we've been dealt. This is the situation we find ourselves in, and it is more important that town meeting occur and that we get through this and allow the town to continue to operate as best it can in these troubling times than that we seek another option at this time. It is the best option in a slew of bad options. So we would encourage town meeting members to approve a virtual town meeting. We will soon be able, hopefully in the not too distant future, when this is behind us, to meet in person again. I'm sure we will all look forward to that, but we can't do that now. We would ask that you approve the virtual town meeting format for the time being to ensure the continued operation of our town.
Thank you. That's Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. And tonight, as we preview the motions, we'll also hear the recommendation from the Advisory and Finance Committee. We will not be debating or deliberating on whether or not to vote yes or no on the motion, but we will entertain questions that you might have. And I have a question, and normally I would go to it, but if this were town meeting, I would be interrupted by a point of order. That takes priority. And I do have a request, if we can go to Precinct 10, Brendan Brady. Brendan has indicated that he has a point of order. So Brendan, if you can let us know your point of order, we welcome you to this town meeting preview.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
So, point of order, you may touch on this later, but just to test this out, one of the mailers that we received from the town stated that you would be providing the call numbers during the preview for town meeting for technical support.
So you broke up a little bit, but we're not going to be providing call numbers to the public. I'm not sure if that's the question you asked. We emailed information to town members. Could you repeat it? You were a little garbled.
Yeah, sorry. Is
go.
this better?
Much better.
Okay. So one of the items we received from the town, the last item on that for the health desk numbers, it said that the call numbers were to be provided during the preview.
So we're going to go to Nicole Manfredi, Assistant Town Moderator. Nicole.
Hi, Brendan. So that was the original mailing because some folks asked to have that information prior to the training sessions. And since then, we've sent out the, can I see that, Steve? I can actually show that. By email, this document.
Correct.
Yeah, so is it something else you're looking for?
No, that's fine. I'll dig back through my emails, but I in part wanted to test this point of order and how it would work.
Oh, okay.
So because this was kind of an agenda that we had in case somebody else had missed the email. So it will not be provided tonight, and we should have the email in our possession. That's correct.
Brendan,
Yes.
you actually raised a very good point, and that is that we are limiting the dissemination of information for most things to town meeting members. And so you're getting things directly from us, and that was one of them, was the phone number. A reminder, this was in the newspaper yesterday. I've publicized it as much as I can. But under the statute, the enabling statute, there is a provision for anyone in the town who wishes to participate. Section 89 says, if you wish to participate in the remote town meeting conducted pursuant to this session, you shall submit, this is for registered voters, you have to be a registered voter, you shall request to participate to the town clerk not less than 48 hours in advance of town meeting. And therefore, we have to date received 2 requests. And it then says, upon receipt of the request and verification of the requester's voter registration status, the clerk shall provide to the requester instructions for participating in the remote town meeting. And there was a 10-day requirement. So we're getting very close to that. So Brendan, you and other town meeting members are getting direct information from the town, but for everyone else, if you're a registered voter, it's necessary under the statute to contact the town clerk on or before Saturday at 6 p.m. The town clerk will in turn notify me, and we will make arrangements for registered voters who have asked to be speakers at town meeting. Everyone can watch town meeting on PACTV. And so with that, we're going to continue with the questions. So again, we can take questions, not debate. And the first is from town meeting member Lori Hutchinson. And Lori, I have the question. We don't need to go to her. But she writes, what happens if town meeting votes to not have a virtual town meeting? What is the effect on the budget? And what is the effect on the schedule for town meeting? So for the first part of that question, I'd like to go to Lynne Barrett. Lynne Barrett is the Director of Finance for the town of Plymouth. And Lynne has the information to be able to explain what effect there will be on the town of Plymouth budget if, in fact, town meeting votes on Monday not to proceed with the virtual. Welcome, Lynne Barrett.
Thank you. So what would happen is we would have to continue to work under the 1/12 budget scenario. So each month we prepare a 1/12 budget based on the department's spending requirements, and we get that budget approved by the Board of Selectmen, and then we have to submit it to the Department of Revenue, and they need to approve it. And they approve it based on a formula that is off of our current year or last year's tax rate recap, our fiscal year 2020 tax rate recap. They take the total appropriations for that whole year and they divide it by 12. And our monthly budget has to be at a minimum that amount. So that's what we've been doing. It's been quite challenging. I think with school starting in September, it's going to continue to become very challenging. At a minimum, we need to have our budget voted by our fall annual town meeting because we need to set our tax rate in November, December timeframe. If we don't, DOR will not set our tax rate if we do not have an annual budget. And if we don't get our tax rate set, then we are going to have revenue consequences. So the sooner that we can get the budget complete, that, we can get back to business under normal circumstances. So it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance, answering a question from town meeting member Lori Hutchinson regarding the effect on the budget. With respect to the second part of Lori's question regarding the schedule, I would refer all of you to the notice that you received from the Select Board. It's entitled Select Board Notice of Remote Participation at Town Meeting. And in the next to last paragraph, in the last line, it says, if the town meeting members do not vote to continue conducting town meetings remotely, then the special and annual town meetings shall be adjourned to September 8th, 2020 at 6 p.m. So when you take your vote, people have asked me to carefully explain a yes vote and a no vote. So a yes vote will be to continue with the annual or the special, depending on which vote we're taking. A no vote would be to adjourn to September 8th. And I can tell you that unless the governor changes the state of emergency, specifically as it relates to large gatherings, that I would not be recommending an in-person town meeting, and I would once again be requesting of the Select Board a virtual town meeting in September. So that would be your no vote. At this time, going on, we'll come back later and do a survey, but at this time we're going to move on to the next motion that'll come before you at the annual town meeting. It has to do with the consent agenda. Mr. Canty moves the following articles of the annual town meeting warrant be considered under a consent agenda, and that such articles be approved and acted upon as written in the warrant as set forth in the report and recommendation of the Advisory and Finance Committee. We went over the materials the other night. There was a request from a town meeting member to help further explain the materials, and we are going to be working on that going forward. But at this time, I'm going to call on Kevin Canty, the Chair of Advisory and Finance Committee, to speak in support of his motion. Mr. Canty.
The following articles were viewed by those organizing this town meeting as being largely non-controversial, mostly housekeeping items where it was anticipated there would be little, if any, debate or discussion. Putting them all on a consent agenda allows for them to all be included in a single vote, which it is hoped will provide more time for the debate and discussion of other articles at this town meeting. The included articles are the following. Article 2, which will allow boards and committees to place their reports on file with the town clerk. Article 3, which will set the spending caps for the listed revolving funds. Article 4, which will authorize 3 specified town committees to continue operating for the next 3 years. Article 6, which will set the stipends for the select board and town moderator. Article 12, which will authorize the town to accept Chapter 90 money for accepted roads. Article 13, which will allow expenditures from the town's promotion fund. Article 14, which will accept the listed roads as public ways. Article 17, which will accept a memorandum of understanding that will allow the schools to receive some reimbursement for transporting children in foster care. And Article 20, which will amend the general bylaws to permit oversight of the demolition of large-scale industrial buildings in town, such as the nuclear power plant. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommended town meeting approve each of these articles in unanimous votes, except for Article 14, which is the one that deals with the acceptance of roads as public ways. That Article 14 was recommended to town meeting to approve in a vote of 12 to 2 to 0.
That's Kevin Canty. He is the Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Now, we do have a motion. You'll see, for those of you that received the email this evening, Mr. Parker, Precinct 7, moves to divide the consent agenda to separate Article 20 as a separate article. So we're not going to be debating this, but I did want to try it out, and I'm going to have Mr. Parker explain. So at town meeting, when you make a procedural motion, you would explain why you're making this procedural motion. And we have several other motions to divide, but this is one of them. Mr. Parker, are you with us? And would you like to explain the reason why you're making a motion to divide? And for those of you reading along, that's a correction. That should be divide rather than amend. Mr. Parker. Randy Parker is a town meeting member in Precinct 7. Randy, as soon as you join us, we welcome you this evening at this town meeting preview. And go ahead and speak if you're ready. This is going to be a majority vote on this procedural vote. And of course, all of our votes are roll call with the V voter.
Not talking. His mic is open.
Okay, so I'm told that Randy's mic is open, but he's not talking. So that's surprising, Mr. Parker. But in any event, we're going to test this out anyway, even though we haven't heard from Randy. I'm sure we'll hear from him at town meeting. But what he's saying essentially to all of you is, I'd like this to be treated separately. I don't want it on the consent agenda. So we're going to take a practice vote again, because we're going to see how many town meeting members we now have who can vote. So you're going to vote on a motion to divide. It's a motion to take what's in an article, and we have many others coming up. So I thought I would take this one in particular to just practice. So the question is, how many of you vote yes to divide this particular motion, the consent agenda, and how many of you wish to divide it and treat Article 20 separately? You'll see a yes vote, a no vote, and abstain. So we're going to go ahead and start to vote, and we're going to look for the timer on voting. And as soon as we have that, we're going to go ahead and start with the vote for 1 minute, and then we'll show you votes. So you can go ahead and start voting. Thank you. And for those of you watching live on PACTV, this is coming to you as a town meeting preview for the special and annual town meetings that are currently scheduled for this coming Monday, August 10th at 6 p.m. Town meeting members will be joining us remotely, participating remotely under an enabling statute that the Massachusetts legislature has passed. We're down to 27 seconds. Town meeting members have been voting. And after this, we're going to continue with the motions that we have and review them with town meeting members. People who are watching and they don't have the TV or they'd like to tell somebody how to watch online, you can go to pactv.org/prime. And that'll give you tonight. Time's up. And at this time, we're going to see. So we have 38 voting yes, 35 voting no, 6 abstentions. So if that were binding tonight, and it is not, it would pass by 3 votes because you have 6 people abstaining. So I'm sure we'll hear Mr. Parker's arguments on Monday, and also town meeting members can also speak in favor or against a procedural. You're now seeing us go through the precincts with the yes votes and the no votes, and you'll see tonight as we go through there are many other requests to divide some of these motions. So you'll have to be deciding whether or not you want to consolidate certain items and bundle them together, or whether you wish to have them all treated separately. And we will do whatever town meeting decides. And so we're scrolling through the last 3 precincts, and now we're going to continue. The next motion you'll be taking will be a motion for the adjourned sessions. That would be for next Thursday, August 13th. And we practiced that the other night, so we're going to move along. And then we would be recessing, if there were no objection from town meeting, we would recess to the special, and then after that dissolves, come back to the annual. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go back now to the special, and you'll see the first motion in the special is for whether or not to have a virtual town meeting in the special. We'll come back to that survey a little bit later. We also have Mr. Canty's motion for the consent agenda. And before I run over Mr. Canty, I'm going to ask him whether he has any additional comments regarding the virtual in the special, the consent in the special, as well as the adjourned session. Mr. Canty, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. I don't have any additional comments on the voting for virtual. I do have comments as to the consent agenda in the special, if you want me to go through that at this time.
Please do, yes.
Okay. Like the prior consent agenda, during the annual town meeting, the following articles have been grouped together because they were viewed as being non-controversial, largely housekeeping matters, where little, if any, debate or discussion was expected. The articles contained in this consent agenda include Article 12, which will rescind unused borrowing authority on previously completed projects. Article 13, which seeks to strike the sunset clause language from the town's Environmental Affairs Fund. Article 14, which permits acceptance of the layout of Carver Road and a permanent easement being granted to the town. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommended town meeting approve each of these articles in unanimous votes.
Thank you. And that's Kevin Canty. Once again, I'm seeing a point of order, and so we're going to go to Precinct 10, Alan Costello. The point of order interrupts the meeting. Welcome, Mr. Costello, to our town meeting preview, and you have a point of order. For those of you watching, this is the town meeting preview. It's coming to you live from PACTV this evening. It is Thursday, and town meeting is scheduled for next Monday, August 10th. Alan Costello, are you with us?
His mic is muted.
I'm told your mic is muted, so unmute your mic, if you would. And please join us. We're currently reviewing in the special town meeting warrant, and we've gone through 2 procedural motions. We're not hearing from Mr. Costello, so we will come back when Mr. Costello indicates that he's available and ready to speak. I'm being told from the studio that his mic was muted.
He has talking privileges.
And he has talking privileges now. Mr. Costello, we might encourage you to go and call the help desk in order to assist you, but you do have talking privileges with the Zoom webinar platform. And with that, we're going to continue and go through the special town meeting articles. And we're now at, I was also told that Mr. Parker had determined that he was now able to be heard. Can we go back to Precinct 7 to Randolph Parker and see if we can hear from Mr. Parker? We'll give him the talking privileges on the Zoom webinar. Mr. Parker, did you?
Hello, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, good evening. How are you? I'm surprised we didn't hear from you earlier.
Thank you for the humor, Steve. Well, as a point of information, you gotta disconnect a Bluetooth soundbar that one is using to hear your broadcast before the microphone on the laptop works. It's interesting. So I shut that off. We've got the laptop back. You want me to be brief and speak to the motion to divide. And the reason I have asked for this is that it is not routine. It's a bylaw change affecting an entire zoning district into perpetuity. It deserves discussion without the potential of influencing the vote on other items grouped in the consent agenda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And he was speaking to his motion to divide on the consent agenda, and we'll be hearing more from him on Monday evening. Again, a reminder for those of you that are having technical issues, either with your own equipment or with the platforms, please call the help desk. You have the information. We're going to be going now to the motions in the special under Article 1, and you'll see we have a number of motions, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, and I'm told that for further information between now and Monday night, you can get your information from the town manager and also from Lynne Barrett, the Director of Finance. And also there are videos that can be watched. You'll see for motion number 2, no motion, no action. It means it was in the warrant, but you didn't receive a motion. Then we go to number 3 in the special town meeting, and Mr. Canty moves the town appropriate the sum of $3,747.56 by transferring from water retained earnings to pay certain unpaid bills of a prior fiscal year as follows. You have a spreadsheet. It is a 9/10 vote of town meeting. Mr. Canty, on your motion.
In 2 separate unanimous votes, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 3. Approval of this article would authorize the Finance Department to process outstanding invoices from a prior fiscal year that still need to be paid for a total of $3,747.56.
Thank you. And that's Mr. Canty on number 3 in the special town meeting. We're going to go to Article 4 in the special. And again, we have 4A1, 4A2, 4B. And for these, we also have people available to answer questions depending on the part of the article. Mr. Canty, on Article 4, would you please explain your recommendation?
Yes. As to Article 4A1, in a unanimous vote, 12-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this component of Article 4. The Advisory and Finance Committee voted once on all of Article 4, but you will be voting on each of the components separately. Approval of this component will authorize the town to appropriate $80,000 from free cash for an asbestos management plan that will be conducted by a licensed environmental consulting agency.
Thank you. And for this article, I've been told there are people you can contact for further questions, including Jonathan Beater, the Director of Department of Public Works, also Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance. We're going to go back now to Town Meeting Member Precinct 10, Alan Costello. I've been told that he has now unmuted himself. Good evening, Mr. Costello. On your point of order, I understand he has talking privileges.
Mr. Triffletti, Alan Costello, Precinct 10.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted, before we advance, to let you know that on the first 2 votes, my vote was not registered. I may be having trouble with V-voter. They've asked me to log out a couple of times and log back in. But I just want to make sure that you were responsive and got to it right away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costello. We will continue throughout the evening to take some votes or surveys. And if you experience further problems, please call the help desk. We also have people here in the studio from OTI Technologies who can assist town meeting members. So I don't see any other requests to speak, so we're going to move on in our warrant of the special town meeting, and we're going to go to Article 5. Mr. Canty moves the town appropriate $500,000 to pay costs of schematic design, feasibility, and owner's project managed services associated with the renovation of or new construction at fire headquarters. And you have the rest of the text, and there are several articles now related to this issue. Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, your recommendation.
In a unanimous vote of 13-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 5. Approval of Article 5 will authorize $500,000 in funding to complete an extensive analysis of the existing conditions of, identify all of the areas that are in need of repair at, and begin development of a design for each of the 4 properties listed to renovate the aging buildings, address compliance with building and OSHA codes, and ensure that the fire department continues to work out of an adequate, safe, and functional space at all of these stations.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. And that's on Article 5. I'm told that for all the videos that have been shown on Monday night and tonight, they're available at pactv.org/Plymouth TM 2020. So you can watch those videos. We're now going to go to Article, we're going to wait for a minute, and I'm going to go to Precinct 8, Paul Cunningham, who wishes to speak. We're currently on Article 5. Mr. Cunningham, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have just a question that with the way this is written, will the town meeting members receive the results, the detailed results of this consultant recommending and probably pricing out each facility in detail? Not that we have any vote on it or anything, but just that we're voting this, we'd like to know how that money it seems to be going to be spread out, because we'll be voting again, I'm sure, later to add something to it.
At this time, in response to a question from Paul Cunningham, I will call on Jonathan Beater. Jonathan is the Director of the Department of Public Works, and we have a question from Town Meeting Member Paul Cunningham. If we can go to Mr. Beater. He's not in which case I will go to Melissa Arrighi, Town Manager. Welcome, Melissa, to this Town Meeting preview.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Cunningham, we will make the results of that public. We will present it one night at a select board meeting. I'll post it either as part of my town manager's report or just online under news.
Thank you. And that completes the...
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now going to go to motion number 6. It's fairly lengthy, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go right to Mr. Canty because he'll be speaking about Article 6 in the special. Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, please proceed.
In a vote of 12-0 with 1 abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 6. The intent of Article 6 is to have $3 million of construction funding available in advance of design completion, so bidding and construction can proceed immediately at whichever fire substation of the ones listed is first to be fully designed. This will allow the work to proceed as quickly as possible and provide the design team with flexibility for scheduling bids to hopefully realize the best prices available in the ever-changing construction market.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. And that's for Article 6. We have no motion, no action for Article 7. For Article 8, we have a motion. And before we get into that, we have a video presentation. And also, Chief Bradley is available to answer questions. We've had a number of questions. So we're going to begin next with the video presentation for Article 8 in the special town meeting. And while you watch the video presentation, you'll see we have a motion to amend in addition to the main motion. We'll be hearing from the town meeting member, Peter Svan, who has made that motion to amend in addition to Mr. Canty. If we can now roll the video, and this is on Article 8 of the Plymouth Special Town Meeting. This is a town meeting preview, and it's coming to you live this evening from PACTV.
Plymouth has a great history of repurposing buildings. Many may not realize, but the site of the current fire headquarters used to house the Plymouth and Brockton Bus Company. The town had to make a quick decision many years ago to acquire this site and to build the existing headquarters in order to utilize specific grant money which funded the entire purchase. Today, headquarters still resides at the Sandwich Street location with notable facility issues. At the upcoming April town meeting members from all precincts will be asked to decide between rebuilding and renovating the existing fire headquarters or building a new fire headquarters on town-owned property on Long Pond Road. Between 1976 and 1978, during the reconstruction of this building, it was discovered that an open running channel of water was not far below the surface. At that time, in order to reduce costs, town officials removed the planned elevator, keeping the headquarters non-ADA compliant. Additionally, the town has made principally reactionary repairs to the building. With some of those repairs, like the recent replacement of the roof, the very action of working on this building caused other problems to become evident or even caused further damage. Fire headquarters not only serves as a fire station, but also as the town's fire department business office for the public. The office handles records for property owners, reports for property owners, and insurance companies, as well as fire investigation records. The business office also handles code enforcement, fire prevention business, and receives and responds to all complaints. Fire headquarters reviews and comments on all plans that are submitted to the town that pertain to roadways and layouts for residential, commercial, and industrial buildings, developments, and projects. It also serves as a used needle collection site. In FY19, headquarters had approved 4,314 permits and certifications, conducted 4,072 code enforcement inspections, completed 5,479 mercantile inspections done by districts. In FY19, collected over $490,000 in permit fees, served as a used needle collection site collecting over $800,000 to date. Plymouth is one of the fastest growing towns in the Commonwealth in both population, housing, and development. The population in 1970 was about 18,000 with over 800 response calls. In 1995, the population was close to 48,000 and had almost 5,000 response calls. Today in 2020, the population is over 63,000 and has almost 9,000 response calls. The firehouses and firefighters have kept up with the growing business office needs, as well as excellent response times for calls. A new headquarters, centrally located geographically, can give a 360-degree response grid, as well as serve the entire town more evenly. A new facility needs to be professionally designed, engineered, and conform to today's customer requirements with easy public access to the building, proper wash facilities, accommodations for both men and women firefighters, access to storage, and employee safety codes so that the firefighters are protected from fumes and toxic materials on their firefighting gear, all the while protecting the multi-millions of dollars of equipment that is housed at the station. The decision is yours: rebuild or build new. Both have their challenges and rewards. Advantages on building new on Long Pond Road. The Long Pond Road site is already owned by the town. The location provides a 360-degree grid service area. It will have state-of-the-art technology. Building codes, accessibility, and safety will meet current standards. There will be no disruption in operations during construction. Disadvantages on building new on Long Pond Road. A $30 million price tag. It will require an override at the ballot box. There are traffic congestion concerns. Advantages on rebuilding headquarters on Sandwich Street. The close proximity to a thickly settled downtown, having a smaller price tag. Disadvantages on rebuilding headquarters on Sandwich Street. It will require an override at the ballot box, unexpected renovation issues. The site remains on a shallow waterbed. There are challenges to meeting building code, accessibility, and safety standards. There will be a disruption of daily operations for both the public and the firefighters. You will be asked to vote on Article 7 or Article 8 and send the question to the ballot box. Renovate or build new.
Thank you, and that is the video for Article 8 in the special town meeting. We're now going to go to Kevin Canty, who's going to give the recommendation of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Mr. Canty.
In a vote of 12-1 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 8. Approval of Article 8 will authorize $30 million in funds for a new fire headquarters at 91 Long Pond Road due to the extremely poor conditions at the current headquarters. The problems at the current headquarters are such that repairs and necessary updates there are not economically feasible, and a new headquarters is therefore necessary.
Thank you, Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. We're now going to go to Peter Savan. He has a motion to amend. A copy of that is in the materials that you received tonight. He'll be followed by Ron Riley. Peter Savan, Precinct 15, welcome. And if you could just briefly explain at this preview why you have made your motion to amend Article 8 of the special town meeting. Good evening and welcome. We don't have you under your name, so we think you may be under the Precinct 1 town meeting member who has 4 people who have joined us. You all have privileges to speak, so let's see. Please speak, Peter Savan, if you're able to speak. If not, I'm going to suggest that you call the help desk and see if the help desk can help you if you're actually with the preview. We'll come back if he is able to join us, but otherwise, going to go to Ron Riley. He's in Precinct 11. He's asked to speak on the motion. And Mr. Riley, welcome again tonight to the town meeting preview. This is coming to you live from PACTV studio, and you have talking privileges.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening. Welcome.
Sorry, some feedback.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know if I can get the questions answered tonight or not, but I'm just curious with the existing station. Where is they're saying the new station would be more centrally located away from the water, but where are the majority of their calls tended to now? They come out of the station, they can go north into the center, south, down towards the beach, or they can head up Long Pond Road. Where is the majority of the calls bringing them?
Thank you.
Answering,
one
question.
We'll have the Fire Chief, Edward Bradley, who is on our panel and available this evening. And we're going to have you have him unmute and join us. Here he is. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. There has been a change, obviously, in the last few years of the areas that they tend to come into. We are getting very busy along the Long Pond Road corridor as that's being built up, and of course there is going to be shortly in the Home Depot area another 300 and something residential units that are being built there. And it more centrally located is right now the stations that are up north, the West Plymouth and the headquarters station are kind of clustered close together. As an example, if I leave headquarters station and head to the North Plymouth station, it's 2.6 miles.
We're having trouble hearing them.
Is hearing okay now?
It's your microphone, so if you can get a little closer maybe to it, that might help. But go ahead. Go ahead.
If I was to leave this station, head to the North Plymouth station, it'd be 2.6 miles. If I was to leave headquarters station and go to West Plymouth station, it would be 2.5 miles. But if I was to leave the headquarters station and head towards Manamet, it's over 6 miles to one of those stations. So there's a large gap in a large area that is not getting really good coverage due to the way that they're all clustered together up here at center of town.
Thank you. That's Fire Chief Edward Bradley. Mr. Riley, you all set? We'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next question. Precinct 5, Patricia McCarthy has a question on Article 8 of the special town meeting. Welcome, Mrs. McCarthy.
Thank you, Steve. I have a question for Ed Bradley or JB. I did get some data on the schematics for the new building, and I was wondering, could someone respond to the layout, the squares footage differences, the needs for ADA compliance, and the needs for housing women, et cetera, and why the cost factor is 30 million versus the North Plymouth Fire Station, because some people try to compare those two, and I know the needs are, I want to know what needs are different. And then also there was some information from a year and a half ago on the projections for the cost factors of the building. And I was able to get that information emailed to me. I don't know if other members have gotten that, so it gives an outline. But maybe if JB or Ed could respond to those kinds of questions on the cost factor of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia McCarthy. Precinct 5, we're going to go back to the Fire Chief, Edward Bradley. Chief Bradley, we're going to ask you to get closer to your microphone if you could, and please answer Patricia McCarthy, town meeting member in Precinct 5. Good evening. Go ahead.
Okay, has that gotten any better?
Keep talking.
I can compare the two stations. The North Plymouth Fire Station is a substation. It's not a central station. It doesn't house as much equipment or people working at one time. But for a comparison, The North Plymouth Fire Station total square footage is 12,200, with an apparatus floor that has square footage of 4,700. The headquarters station would be total square footage of 35,000 square feet and have an apparatus floor of 12,000 square foot of room for apparatus. It's a much larger building because it is the central station. It's not a substation that feeds the other stations as needed.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to continue. I'll check back, see whether or not we haven't heard from Mr. Svan, and so we can come back to him at a future time. But we're going to move on in the special town meeting to Article 9, and we have a motion from Mr. Canty. And Mr. Canty, if you want to go forward and give your recommendation. And that'll be on 9A. Kevin Canty is the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Good evening.
Sorry, I was muted by the host. Article 9A, in a vote of 10-2-0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 9A. Approval of this article will appropriate $751,500 from the Community Preservation Fund for the purpose of renovating and improving Jenny Pond Park. A park grant for $337,270 has been secured and will be applied to the project cost after completion, and submission for the reimbursable grant will bring the cost to the town down to $414,230 when all is said and done.
Thank you. And I do see that Richard Neely has asked to speak. He's on Precinct 15, and we'd like to welcome Mr. Neely to this town meeting preview. It's coming to you live from PACTV. Mr. Neely, welcome. Good evening. And Precinct 15, Richard Neely. If we could hear from Mr. Neely. And I'm being told that we're finding him. And
hello?
Good evening, Mr. Neely. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question on the previous article, which basically the questions the cost of demolition of the existing building and whether there are any problems with underground fuel tanks at that site.
So Mr. Neely is asking question on 8. We just heard from Mr. Canty on 9A. We'll go back to the fire chief, Ed Bradley. Mr. Bradley, are you able to answer Mr. Neely's question regarding the demolition? Fire Chief Ed Bradley is attending as a panelist this evening.
Someone just got me a headphone. Is that any better with the volume?
Go ahead. Start talking.
The $30 million does not include any money for demolition of the current building. No.
Okay. So, Mr. Neely, that's the response that we have in terms of the demolition. There was a second part. Go ahead, Mr. Neely.
I want to understand, do we have any idea of the cost that should be added into this $30 million figure?
Fire Chief Bradley, any further response to Mr. Neely regarding whether there's any added cost for the demolition?
I'd ask you to get that answer from Melissa Origi, the town manager.
Okay. Maybe we can switch to the town manager, Melissa Origi, who can either respond or get back to us. Melissa, Mr. Neely has a question. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Neely. There is no demolition costs in there for a reason. The selectmen, as custodians of the public property, will need to make a determination if the building should be knocked down or maybe repurposed, maybe used for restroom facilities, maybe leased if we want to do a concession stand at the park. So that'll be a determination. They'll make it a later date. In addition, we don't know how long the construction is going to take. So any, or if it's going to pass, but any demolition costs that we put in right now would probably not be reasonable in 4 years or so, however long it takes to build the new facility.
Thank you, Town Manager Melissa Arrighi. And if there's not a further question from Mr. Neely, I'm going to move on with our preview. For 9B, we have no motion, no action. For 9C, you'll see that the motion is being made by Mr. Cohen, who is a town meeting member in Precinct 3. So we're going to go to him, and he can speak to his motion. Bill Cohen, Precinct 3. Good evening, Bill, and welcome. This is our Plymouth Town Meeting preview, coming to you live on August 6th. Go ahead, Bill. Mr. Cohen has talking. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Bill Cohen, I'm speaking not as the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee, but I'm speaking as the town meeting member for 3. And I made the motion to move Article 9C, which is a recommendation by the Community Preservation Committee to expend $22,000 plus on the restoration, preservation, rehabilitation of 2 important maps that the town owns that are part of its historical art collection. They are unable to be displayed. These portraits would, maps would be restored and then framed and displayed at Town Hall. I did a presentation on Monday night that outlined this. So that was my motion.
Thank you. And we have a couple of questions. We're going to first go Precinct 4, Virginia Davis, followed Precinct 4, Samuel Butterfield. Virginia Davis, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's just a question. I looked at the motion, and it's a typographical error. I believe it looks like 22,085. Do you see it? Instead
Yes.
of a period, it's a comma.
Yes,
on
we
the
do.
amount of money, unless I'm going blind.
Yes. We'll ask Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance, to review that with the.
Yeah, I think it's just a typo.
So it looks like it's a typo, and we'll get that fixed. Thank you, Virginia Davis. We're going to go on to Precinct 4, Samuel Butterfield. Welcome, Mr. Butterfield.
Well, thank you very much. I was just, Jenny's question was the same as mine. I was just concerned about that typo.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good time now for me to explain that if you are in the queue as a speaker and if your question is answered, there's then a feature in the vVoter where you can cancel your request to speak. I'm going to go to Donna Curtin in Precinct 3, who also asked to be recognized. Donna, welcome this evening.
Good evening, Steve. Can you hear me?
We can.
I would just like to ask, I understand that the Finance Committee did not give their recommendation on this motion. And as a member of the Visit 1820 committee that put together some of the materials to request the restoration of these historical maps to display in Town Hall, I just wanted to see if they were aware that the committee had actually worked on providing some estimates for this project that were based on other professional conservators' estimates that had been involved in other town work, such as the restoration of the Walling map at the public library, which many people are familiar with. So these were professional conservators' estimates that had been sought under the leadership of that particular committee that's done a lot of the presentation of historical materials in the town hall that I know many people are familiar with. And I believe perhaps that the Finance Committee did not have that information available to them when they made their decision. So I'd just like to hear if that is indeed the case. And thank you.
Thank you. And you raise a good point, because at town meeting, when we don't have a recommendation from the Advisory and Finance Committee, we ask them to speak as to the reason why we don't have a recommendation. We're going to go to Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, who will speak on this article. Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In a vote of 6 to 7 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee does not recommend town meeting approve Article 9C. The committee did not feel they were presented with enough information to appropriate $22,085 to restore and frame 2 maps, as no estimates, proposals, or other such backup material was provided to the committee as part of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. And unless there's anything further, we're going to move on. For 9D, we have also a motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee. Kevin Canty, 9D, please speak.
In a vote of 10 to 2 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 9D. Town meeting approval of this article will appropriate $80,000 from the Community Preservation Fund for the purchase of approximately 9.1 acres as shown on the assessor's map. This acquisition would expand the 6 ponds preserve.
Thank you, Kevin Canty. We're continuing with the warrant on the special town meeting. And what we would do is Article 10, we have no motion, no action. Article 11, no motion, no action. And if we had approved the consent agenda, then we would skip Article 12 and 13 and 14 because they would have already been voted in the special town meeting. So at this time, we would move to have a motion to dissolve. And I'm going to take a vote on a motion to dissolve. That way we'll know that we're done tonight on the preview with the special town meeting warrant, and we'll have another chance to practice as town meeting members as to whether or not you're able to access the V-Voter. We have, last count, 78 attendees, and so we're going to go through the precincts again to see. It'll come up on your screens, and then we'll time you in order to make sure that you have an opportunity to vote. We're OTI Technologies. You'll see it's going to come up on the screen that your opportunity to vote, and as soon as we do, this is coming to you live on Thursday, August 6th. Motion to dissolve. You can vote yes, no, or abstain. You can start voting now. The timer is going. Town meeting members are voting on whether to complete and end at our regular town meeting on Monday. At this point, it would not be possible to come back and revisit an article. Town meeting members can vote to reconsider up until we do dissolve. A town meeting member who votes on the prevailing side of a vote can then move to reconsider. Motion to reconsider is a majority vote, and if a majority of town meeting members vote to reconsider, we could once again take up an article that had been previously voted. Town meeting members are now voting whether to dissolve. Again, we're testing the V-Voter platform and practicing tonight with town meeting members. We're taking this time and we're done now voting. We're now going to scroll through the precincts. For those of you watching at home, you'll see 63 say go ahead and dissolve. 2 say no, keep going. Let's hear more about the special, and 2 of you can't decide. So you've abstained, and some of you have not voted. So as we go through the screen, for those of you, you'll see precincts 4, 5, and 6 are shown on here. If you don't see, you might want to call the help desk if you intended to vote and it's not shown. 7, 8, and 9 are being shown on the screens. And on the night of town meeting, if we don't show a precinct, we'll show it again. We're currently showing 10, 11, and 12. And then we're going to continue. I'm going to ask afterwards if we can come back to 1, 2, and 3. But at this time, we're on 10, 11, and 12. And then we have 13, 14, and 15. And they're shown here. And I'm going to ask if we have the ability to come back to 1, 2, and 3 at this time. And there we go, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll see how they voted. So again, town meeting members, you have a chance to look see how you voted, and if you have a question, please call the help desk, or if you need to interrupt on night at town meeting, you can do a point of order. At this time, we're going to now, we've dissolved the special. We're going now to the annual. We're going to reopen it, and if we have approved the consent agenda, we're going to move Article 1. We have no motion, no action. Articles 2, 3, 4 are in the consent agenda. They will have been voted. Article 5, no motion, no action. Article 6 in the consent agenda, and that brings us to Article 7, and that is the budget article. And you'll see we have multiple motions. Again, reminding you in your motion book, you can look at the budget and the way in which it's been presented. We're going to begin with the subcommittee A group, and I'm going to begin by asking Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, to talk about the 7A motion. Mr. Canty.
The Advisory and Finance Committee reconsidered and amended its original recommendation on the entire budget at its July 8th, 2020 meeting. The committee's amended recommendations were again voted according to budget subcommittees. This first motion deals with the area of the budget contained in Budget Subcommittee A's section of the budget. Accordingly, in a unanimous vote of 14-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $201,198 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this article.
Thank you, and that's on Subcommittee Report A. We then have a motion on Subcommittee Report B. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee B's section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $1,219,179 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section of the budget.
Thank you. And I see we have a question. Patricia McCarthy, Precinct 5, followed by Ronald Riley, Precinct 11. Patricia McCarthy, welcome again.
It's on Subcommittee E, but I wanted to get in the queue.
Okay, I'll be sure to come back to you, Mr. Riley. Ronald Riley is in Precinct 11.
Hi, Steve.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. Question, I had asked this in the past at a previous town meeting, and it's a little bit involved, so I don't know if we'll get an answer tonight, but maybe it could get emailed to the town meeting members. But what is, as the, Article 7, Article 9, everything included, what is the impact on the average homeowner? We see a chart for the fire station. If it came in at 30 million, it would be $86 for a $375,000 house, something to that nature. What is it if everything got approved as the articles are written, all articles? What is the impact on the average homeowner, the increase?
Well, we'll see if we can get an answer tonight. I'll go to Lynne Barrett. She's the Director of Finance. Lynne, do you have a response this evening, or should we get back to her?
No, I think we can figure it out. If town meeting members have their supplemental 1 packet that we mailed to town meeting members about 3 weeks ago, on page 18 of that supplemental packet, at the top, we're estimating, and this is an estimate because we still have to finish values, new growth, all of that, and have town meeting vote everything. So we're estimating a tax rate of $17.20 per 1,000 of value. So depending on what the average home in Plymouth is about $351 $1,000. So,
Is there for the increase from last year to this year?
it's an increase of 85 cents. So if you take the 85 cents times, it'd be about increase of about $298. Now,
okay.
And that's based on if your value has stayed the same and with that estimated tax rate.
Sure. Oh yeah, and I know this isn't a scientific exact amount, but just try to get a ballpark. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronald Riley, Precinct 11, and responding, Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance. We're going to go back to Mr. Canty for Subcommittee Report B2. Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This particular vote was covered by the same vote. So in a unanimous vote of 14 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends this portion of Subcommittee B's section of the budget as well. The net decrease for all of Subcommittee B is that $1,219,179 figure I referenced earlier. That is a reduction from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section of the budget.
Thank you. And that's a 2/3 vote. A reminder to town meeting, when we do meet in person, we are able to do some voice votes, which may be unanimous and not require roll call. At this town meeting, all will be roll call vote. And I'm going to go back to Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance, further responding. Lynne Barrett.
Hi. Okay, let me get my video. I want to, the page 18 of the supplement book is actually prior to us finding out that state aid is level funded. So state aid is being level funded. So that would be another increase of approximately about $3.5 million to help with the budget. So that would decrease the amount that we're actually going to raise in taxes. So that average increase is actually going to decrease by, instead of an increase of 85 cents in the tax rate, it's probably going to be more like an increase of about 45 to 50 cents in the tax rate. Okay?
Thank you, Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance. We're now going to move on to Subcommittee Report C, and you'll see we also have a motion to amend. We're going to begin with Kevin Canty on the main motion for Subcommittee Report C. Mr. Canty.
A unanimous vote of 14 to 0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee C's section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $86,632 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section of the budget.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8. Mr. Cunningham has a motion to amend. He moves that the town reduce this item 30, fire personal services overtime, and that should read by $100,000. Mr. Cunningham, would you like to explain why you're making your motion? Paul Cunningham is in Precinct 8.
Made a motion looking at the budget, first of all, in the year of pandemic. I'm not really favoring starting off by budgeting $1.8 million for overtime. And we're at a full complement of fire personnel. I don't think we should be building that into something that part of the regular hours. So that this is a token amount. The amount that the people talked about at last year's level funded budget had a tremendous increase in there for the 400, Plymouth 400. So that's what everything was based off of, and they added another 85,000 in overtime. I think 100,000 was, it really should have done 250,000, but that was just sending a message that it should be cut back.
Thank you. And that's Paul Cunningham, and he's in Precinct 8. So what will happen at town meeting is we will now go to this motion to amend. We'll debate it, then we'll vote it. It's a majority vote. Then we go back to the main motion as amended or not, and we'll then vote on the Subcommittee Report C, which will also be a majority vote. We're now going to Subcommittee Report D. Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Go ahead.
In a unanimous vote of 14-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee D's section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $465,769 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section.
Thank you. Now we're going to Subcommittee Report E, Kevin Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee E's section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $344,619 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section.
We're going to go to Betsy Hall first, Precinct 12, followed by Patricia McCarthy, Precinct 5. Betsy Hall has a motion to reduce item 50 and also item 51. Betsy Hall, again tonight, we're just talking about the reason for the motion, and then on Monday, you certainly can debate it. Betsy Hall, welcome. You need to unmute yourself, I'm being told. If you could just unmute yourself, and then we'll have you proceed. Betsy Hall,
okay.
We can
you
hear you.
Me?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Betsy Hall, the Precinct 12. I was and have been for a couple of years dismayed that more cuts are not being made to the budget. I think we need to begin to really prioritize what is an absolute necessity and what is a luxury and what's in the middle, someplace a want. My neighbors are saying to me that they feel their taxes have gone up too much and that they're finding it burdensome, and they're wanting me as a town meeting member to begin to look at ways to tame our budget. So I decided to look at all of the different items on the budget, and one of them that stood out to me is the $2 million for the library. And so I began to delve into that. I had a lot of emails from library people back and forth, Barry de Blasio, Jim Harris, and so forth. And so I realized that the library's been closed since February, and the library has requested around $1 million in materials over the last 3 years, including this year, 331, I believe it is, from materials and supplies for a closed library. So I thought, if we as town meeting members do not begin to say no to some of these budget items, then our real estate taxes just have to keep going up, up, up. Repair of roofs, repair of buildings, a new fire department, all of those kinds of things are very important. The library is also very important, and I voted to put a new roof on the library, and I've always voted for the library budget. I'm a former English teacher, but the reason I put this in is because the library has a staff of 22 full-time people with full benefits, and they have a staff of 5 part-time people. So their benefits do not show up in our booklet under the budget because it's a separate item. But that is their benefits put them well over $2 million for the cost to run the library. So I asked for the reduction of 1 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff and a reduction in materials and supplies.
Thank you. Going to Patricia McCarthy, Precinct 5. Ms. McCarthy, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question, I guess for the Finance Committee or Lynn. There's a discrepancy at least to my knowledge, in some numbers in the supplement book on page 71 on the top of the library. The adjusted figure there is $1,151,121 on for personnel services, and in our motions book on page 4, that number recommended by the Finance Committee for personnel services is $1,262,731. There's also a discrepancy in the library for other expenses in the two budgets. And then I I have a further question. Should I ask my other questions?
Yes,
so I
go
get
ahead and
them
ask
all
your
out?
question now, and then we'll get them answered.
Okay, fine. And my question is, with the amount of money that's in the budget as it's been adjusted with the reductions, does that include bringing back staff, the personnel? Is it projected, hopefully, when the library opens, bringing back the laid off staff to staff the two libraries? Is that in that projection of the monies that are there, the 1,151,000 or the 1,262,000, whichever is the correct number?
So
do you get the? I don't know if they get the gist of my question, but I know the library is being discussed about how to open it. It's the next thing they're discussing in terms of opening a building. The selectmen.
So we have a number of panelists this evening. I'm going to start with Jennifer Harris. She's the library director. Jennifer, are you able to answer at least the latter part of Ms. McCarthy's question?
Well, thank you. This is Jennifer Harris, library director. I work closely with Barry de Blasio today. He has the salary numbers. So I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like him to address that. But please know, in general, the library staff were furloughed. They were furloughed from May until July 1st or June 30th. So that means that their health insurance was being paid, but their salary was not. And then the additional 14 staff were laid off, which means they were not paid since July 1st. So currently, we've already lost $32,000 just in general on the laid off staff. The whole plan is to bring the staff back once the library opens, and I'm very hopeful it's in the next few weeks. I would like to address Ms. Hall's issue about the materials budget. So she said the number 1 million over 3 years. The materials budget is currently put in for FY21 at $323,000. So the fact that the library is closed does not mean that we're not using it. This is a compilation of many different types of materials, of which 177,000 is online databases, downloadable ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, all the access that the town community has been receiving since the library closed in March. So just because the building was closed, we were continuing to provide services throughout the town. And that's from both branches. We have wireless access, so people could actually sit out in the parking lot and download their books. So you can't separate that out. And we're ready to send off material purchases as soon as staff is back, but we've already started that anyhow. So, so even though the buildings are closed, we're still going on quite strong. I would like to turn this over to Barry, if you don't mind, for the salary discussion.
Yes, Barry de Blasio is the Director of Community Resources. Welcome, Barry.
Welcome. Can you hear me, Steve?
We can. Go ahead.
Fine. Great. One thing, and thank you, Betsy, and Betsy and I have had numerous conversations, but I think the one thing that people need to understand is the Menominee branch is a satellite of the main branch. And so it's hard to separate out the individual costs of Menominee. So, and a good example is when we staff the Menominee Library, we rotate a number of staff or professional library staff through that. So they go from the main branch to the Menominee branch. And a good example is if there's a children's program being offered at the Menominee Library that night, we take someone from the main library to come over and run that program. So it's hard to close something like the Menominee Library and see some of the direct savings that Betsy's proposing. And a good example is if we actually look at FTEs, there's probably 2-point-something FTEs that make up the Menominee Library. Putting that together, there's probably 4 full-time and 6 part-time that put together the hours, the weekly hours that to operate the Menominee Library. So you'll be taking out parts of their, weekly work week. And so it might be, 0.25 or 25% of their work week. So it's difficult to eliminate that from their annual salary, meaning I understand what she's trying to do. It's just not quite that simple. And it's the same really with materials. If we were to close the Manomet Library branch as a satellite, we have every expectation that the community need is going to shift to the main library. And so our resources are Plymouth Library resources. We wouldn't just stop buying or purchasing them. They would be housed in the main library, and that's the downloadable materials, that's the current materials that are purchased. So it is difficult to say that by eliminating a specific dollar figure, that is the true operational cost of the Manomet Library. It's the Plymouth Library system, and that is a satellite branch. So I just wanted to make that point. And then to Patricia's comment, yes, that is the expectations, and I think Jennifer touched on that. We're not a full service library currently. We're doing curbside pickup, we're doing online programming, and we're doing downloadable digital materials every day. But that is not a full functioning library. So we were able to reduce a number of our savings. And I think that's what we're seeing reflected. I can tell you, if we look at the reductions as they're already being proposed, it really is mainly Sunday. What's been eliminated is the main branch being open on Sunday, and that's close to a $50,000 savings. We also have 2 frozen positions in there, and then 3 part-times. So again, to answer Patricia's comment, our expectation is to bring most of the staff that are laid off back once we increase to a full service library. And it's our hope that we can do that safely in the very near future. Jennifer is in constant contact with everybody in our network to see what they're doing. Currently, I believe she told me there are 8 that are in various phases of reopening and introducing the public to their buildings. We hope to be there too. My conversations with the town manager have been very supportive. She agrees to bring back staff as we increase our services. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Barry de Blasio. He's the Director of Community Resources. Mrs. McCarthy, does that answer your questions?
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. I just got mixed up for a minute.
Yeah.
Does the money that are in these, whichever line item is correct, which Lynne, Barrett, and Kevin will figure that out, that we'll be voting on. Does that include, though, the projection of bringing the people back? Or are we going to go to fall town meeting and have to increase those line items? That's what I wanted to make sure that number was inclusive of getting the staff back on, back.
Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance, if you could respond.
Yeah, so Pat, on page 71 of the supplement book and the motion document budget, the numbers match up to each other. I'm not sure if you're looking.
Oh, no, I have it right. I have them open right in front of me. So one of them, the Finance Committee recommended is 1,151,121 on page 71 for personnel. And then on page 4 of the motions book, the motions, it says 1,262,731 for personnel services, line 50.
If you look at Pat on page 71,
yes,
there's several line items that add up to 1,262,731 for personal services.
I get you. Oh, okay, it's included there. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I got mixed up.
All
I got
right,
a little confused.
We're going to continue.
My bottom line was it includes bringing them back. Thank you.
And the numbers do include bringing the staff back.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance, responding to Patricia McCarthy. We're going to go for more questions only. We're going to go to Precinct 15, Richard Neely, followed by Precinct 8, Catherine Holmes. Mr. Neely, welcome once again with your question.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment on the report of the subcommittee in Planning E. There are at least 3 examples where part of the budget includes extra activity for Plymouth 400. Given the greatly reduced activities and as a result of the virus. One would
So,
expect.
Mr. Neely, I don't want to interrupt you, except that tonight's purpose is to get information on the motions and ask questions. If you'd like, email me and I'll put you on a speakers list to continue your argument at town meeting.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Catherine Holmes, Precinct 8.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes. Good evening.
So could Mr. de Blasio clarify that? I just want to make sure that I understood and heard it correctly.
Clarify what?
There's some echo. I'm sorry, I'm having some distortion. So if I understood what he said, by closing the Plymouth Main Library on Sundays, it's going to be a cost savings of $50,000. Why is it not a cost savings to close the library in Manomet completely? And what is the cost of moving those online services to the main branch? I think I missed that, and I just need a little bit of clarity. Thank you.
Barry de Blasio, we have a question.
After I talk.
Barry de Blasio, Director of Community Resources.
Sure. So just to be clear, so Sunday at the main branch is fully on overtime. So everyone working on Sunday is an overtime shift. So by eliminating that, you eliminate that overtime savings, thus closing the library on Sunday. It's actual, I believe, 43, just so we're clear. I'm sorry, 49,171 to be exact is the savings of the overtime. To get back to the other question, so keep in mind, so the materials, we can look at it for materials and we can look at it for staffing. We have 25, I believe, full-time employees in the library. And the way that we staff, so they're all library staff. They're not Manomet library staff and main library staff, they're libraries. And so the way that we schedule or staff Manomet Library is we rotate the professionals through Manomet. And keep in mind that many of the librarians have a specific skill set. There's a technology library, there's a children's library, there's an outreach librarian. And so it makes, you're not going to duplicate all those services in Manomet. You have them focused out of the main branch and you rotate them through Manomet to provide those services locally. And so by not providing them in Manomet, we still wind up with 75% of many, anywhere from 60 to 75% of a person's job description to be in the main library. We would, we have contractual agreements where we would not just be able to eliminate those positions because their Manomet requirement is no longer there. We would just have them work more hours in the main library and increase the services provided through the main library. So it's difficult to say that we could eliminate those staff because they're bundled through various staff, probably 6 different staff that make up the scheduling there. So yes, there would be some savings, but it certainly would not be anywhere near the number that Ms. Hall proposed.
Thank you, Barry de Blasio, Director of Community Resources. Catherine Holmes, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I think that Betsy's making a really good point, though, and I think that it's something we all need to do as town meeting members.
Again, I don't want to argue that. I don't want to argue it. You can do that on Monday.
No. So can I just finish my thought, please, Steve?
Go ahead.
So if I'm understanding correctly, though, Betsy's numbers may be maybe not accurate from your perspective, but could we get an estimate? If you were to close the Manomet Library, could you put together the numbers so we could see what that would look like? We could have the facts in front of us.
So in answer to the question, I'm going to ask Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance. Is that something that the town is able to put together to provide to town meeting members? Lynne Barrett, Director of Finance.
Well, we'll work with Jennifer and Barry and the town manager to look at those numbers, like utility numbers for the building and those kinds of things. We'll take a look at all that and see what those numbers could be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm incredibly supportive of the library, but I think that in this time, I need to at least have the facts in front of us in order to make these really hard, uncomfortable decisions.
Thank you. We're going to continue with Subcommittee Report F. Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee.
In a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Budget Subcommittee F's section of the budget, incorporating a net decrease of $1,900,000 from the committee's original budget recommendation for this section of the budget.
Thank you. On Monday night at this time, we would be taking a recess. We do that within 2 hours. You'll be watching a very short video during the recess, but tonight is not a regular town meeting. We're just going to keep going. And so we're going to go to motion 7B, Mr. Canty.
This is the Water Enterprise Fund, the first of the enterprise funds. Each enterprise fund is voted on separately by town meeting, though all enterprise funds were contained in Budget Subcommittee G's work product. The enterprise fund budgets were also reconsidered at the Advisory and Finance Committee's July 8th, 2020 meeting, along with the rest of the budget. In regards to the Water Enterprise Fund, in a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of Budget Subcommittee G's work product, incorporating a net decrease of $102,923 to their original recommendation as detailed in Subcommittee Report G's Water Enterprise section.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. And now we'll move on to the next one, 7C, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of Budget Subcommittee G's work product, incorporating a net decrease of $161,374 to the original recommendation of the subcommittee as detailed in Subcommittee Report G's Sewer Enterprise section.
And now we're going to move to 7D, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of Budget Subcommittee G's work product, incorporating a net decrease, increase of $15,000 to their original recommendation as detailed in Subcommittee Report G's Solid Waste Enterprise section.
Thank you. And your voice fell off a little. I don't know if it's at your end of the mic, but let's go to 7E, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of Budget Subcommittee G's work product, incorporating a net decrease of $71,958 to their original recommendation as detailed in Subcommittee Report G's Airport Enterprise section.
Thank you. Finally, 7F, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of Budget Subcommittee G's work product as detailed in Subcommittee Report G's Cable Public Access Enterprise section.
Thank you. And that completes Article 7. Article 8 is withdrawn. Moving to Article 9. We have the A items and we have the B items, and we have motions to divide. We'll begin with the main motion on the A items. Mr. Canty.
The Advisory and Finance Committee reconsidered and amended its original recommendation on this article at its July 8th, 2020 meeting. And in a vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this article as amended. The amended recommendation incorporates a net decrease for all of Article 9 of $589,490 for the committee's original recommendation. The amended spreadsheet can be located in the Supplement 1 document that has been provided to town meeting members.
Thank you. And now we have motions to divide. The original motion that I received from a town meeting member asked that all 57 be voted separately. And if we were to do that at this virtual, they would all be done electronically, and each vote would probably take at least a couple of minutes. So in this case, we would add 2 hours to your virtual town meeting if you voted all items separately. And I asked town meeting to consider that when you receive these motions to divide, because it will certainly extend the time, and we have certainly scheduled additional time on Thursday, August 13th. Mr. Cunningham, on your motion to divide. Mr. Cunningham is in Precinct 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I had, I believe, I'm in line with what you and I had talked about. I made a motion to divide or consolidate, we might say, A14, A15, and A21 packaged together, which totals $623,228, to reduce those to zero. No, I don't have an explanation of the items there, but if you want me to mention those in particular.
No, I think on that night you can argue. I think what you're saying, however, is you want to take these separately because essentially what you're saying is you want the opportunity to vote no on certain items and vote yes on others. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Anything else you'd like to say at this time on your motion to divide?
That I had others put together as A23, A24, A30, and A32, which totaled together $580,961 to, just because the year that we're in and having attended capital outlay committee meetings, it's a Santa Claus list many times, and I know it's very difficult for someone who doesn't work in the department to pick out things to reduce, but you just have to be cutting in this situation we're in with the unknown. And then they also put together A33, a reduction of 38,000, and A39 to reduce a 35,000 to zero. So I had 3 motions there.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Cunningham?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now we go to Stacy Dela Cruz. She's Precinct 10, and she's also moved to divide Article 9A. Stacy, do you want to be heard? Stacy Dela Cruz is a town meeting member in Precinct 10, and we are doing a town meeting preview. This is coming to you live from PACTV studio. And this is on Thursday, August 6th, and we're not hearing from Stacy. So, but her motion is similar, and if we hear from her in a little while, we'll come back to her. She had another meeting, I'm told, and she's no longer with us. So we're going to go to the B motions, and we have the same situation, but we'll begin with Mr. Canty.
The Advisory and Finance Committee reconsidered its original recommendation on all of Article 9 at its July 8th, 2020 meeting. And in a vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this article as amended. Once again, the net decrease to all of Article 9 as a result of this reconsideration and amendment is a reduction of $589,490 from the committee's original recommendation on all of Article 9.
Thank you. And we see that Ms. Dela Cruz has a motion to divide. She wants to take B1 separate from B2 and B3. And in a case of the motion to divide on the B articles, her procedural motion is a majority vote. However, the motion, if it passes on each of these items, would be a 2/3 vote. It involves borrowing. We're now going to move on with a question from Richard Barbieri. He's in Precinct 3. Mr. Barbieri, welcome this evening to this town meeting preview, coming to you from PACTV in preparation for the annual town meeting. Good evening.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. I wanted to ask a question on a previous Article 3, and I kind of missed it because we were jumping around. Could I ask a question on that?
Yes, we're all through with Article 9, and before we go to 10, go ahead and ask your question.
All right. Under the shellfish upweller for the harbor master, I'm reading that, here we go. There's going to be some fees that we're going to collect. Are we subsidizing the oyster industry on that, or?
I wrote down.
No, this is,
Melissa Origi, town manager, go ahead.
this is the fees that we charge to those license holders. You know, we rent out the aquaculture licenses.
Correct.
We charge them a fee. I don't remember what it is. It's inexpensive.
A fee for the land, right?
I think the board calls it a lease or a license. I don't remember which one.
It's for right. So, we're going to raise, this upweller is for raising of clams. And it says to seed. Now, we can't clam anywhere inside the harbor. I didn't know where we were going to be putting these clams that we're going to raise.
Let me find out. Let me give Chad a call and get right back to you. Can you shoot me your email and I'll just respond to you directly?
Okay. My email is XYZ.
Just send it to her, Mr. Barbieri.
At Verizon.net. Okay. I don't get a lot of emails.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We're going to go now to Betsy Hall, Precinct 12, followed by Michael Withington, Precinct 5. Betsy Hall, good evening.
Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
A point of order in that my amendment in no way talks about the closing of the Manomet Library. I think any discussion about the closing of the Manomet Library is out of order because my amendment in no way suggests closing the Manomet Library.
Yeah,
the amount of money that I put in for salary was actually a figure that I received from Barry de Blasio as far as one full-time staff and one associate.
You are correct that your motion to amend is not specific as to closing any particular building. It's a dollar amount in both line item.
I believe only the selectmen can make that decision.
Well, it would not be a decision for town meeting. Moving on to Michael Withington, Precinct 5. Mr. Withington.
Yes, this is Michael Withington, Precinct 5. Just to address Mr. Barbieri's question was that is not that is a fee charged if you have an upweller. So that is a fee on the aquaculture industry to promote intent, not subsidized, because I do not want the town subsidizing the oyster.
Mr. Withington, you are breaking up a little bit. You might want to reach out directly to Mr. Barbieri, or Mr. Barbieri reach out to Mr. Withington. We're going to continue. Article 10, the motion is Article 10 is withdrawn. Article 11 is withdrawn. If we approve the consent agenda, then we will have already voted on Articles 12, 13, and 14. 15 is withdrawn. We would now move to 16A. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 10-0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16A. The purpose of Article 16A is to pay off the remaining debt for the 1820 courthouse and avoid the added cost of interest payments. The efforts of the Community Preservation Committee to accelerate the payments on this project have resulted in the debt being paid off a year early.
Thank you. And that's a majority in a roll call vote. 16B, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 10-0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16B. The purpose of this article is to pay off the remaining debt of $990,000 for the meeting house and avoid the added cost of interest payments.
And moving on to the next one, Mr. Canty, go ahead.
Article 16C, in a unanimous vote of 10-0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16C. The purpose of Article 16C is to utilize CPA funds to reduce the now $1.8 million borrowing authorization for Stevens Field renovations by up to $500,000 from fiscal year 2021 Community Preservation Act estimated annual revenues.
Thank you. And moving on, 16D is withdrawn. 16E, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16E. The purpose of Article 16E is to utilize $520,033 in CPA funds and $25,000 from free cash to address violations at Manomet Recreation Area, Seaver Field, and West Plymouth Recreation Area. The town and CPC consider these upgrades and mobility issue repairs a priority to ensure safe and accessible play areas for all individuals in town.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. 16F.
In a vote of 8 to 2 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16F. The purpose of Article 16F is to utilize $120,000 in CPC funds and $50,000 in recreation funds for the creation of 6 pickleball courts at Forges Field. The Recreation Revolving Fund will commit to future maintenance costs of the pickleball courts.
Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16G. The purpose of Article 16G is to utilize $200,000 in CPA historical funds for the restoration, preservation, and rehabilitation of headstones and monuments at the Burial Hill Cemetery, and restoration for the stone wall and columns at the town square main entrance.
Thank you. 16H, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 16H. Town meeting approval of this article will allow the Community Preservation Committee to allocate 10% of the estimated annual revenues of the Community Preservation Fund for future spending in each of the following: open space, historic resources, and community housing. Additionally, 4% of the estimated annual revenues of the CPA will be set aside for funding administrative and operational expenses, and an amount will be set aside for interest and payment on debt. The balance of the annual CPA revenue will be held as a reserve balance, which can be used for any CPCA purpose at future town meetings.
Thank you. And now, if you look at your motions, town meeting members, on the consent agenda, if it passes, we will have considered 17. 18 is withdrawn. 19, no motion, no action. Now 20 will depend on the motion to amend from Mr. Parker. Tonight we did a survey. It barely passed, but if that were to occur on Monday, we would now be taking up the motion on 20 separately. And so we'll do that at this time. Mr. Canty, what is your recommendation?
Mr. Triffletti.
Yes.
Michael Withington.
Yes, Michael, I did see you. I thought this was from before. Did you care to be recognized?
Yes, I will. Please.
Go ahead, Mr. Withington.
Two things. I wanted to make sure that Mr. Barbieri understood that there was no subsidization of aquaculture industry, that is a fee on the aquaculture upwellers.
Thank you.
Other thing that I wanted to speak about was the pickleball courts. I would suggest that we make tennis courts that can be converted to pickleball courts, because
Mr. Withington, I don't interrupt you, but again, that's an argument. If you have questions tonight, this is an opportunity to get information. Do you want to frame that in a question, or you want to wait till Monday night and make your argument?
I'll frame it in a question. is it possible to have tennis courts that can be converted to pickleball courts, or is it impossible to convert a pickleball court to a tennis court?
Okay. A question from Michael Withington to the town. I'm going to first go to Melissa Arrighi, who can then direct it to another department head if appropriate. Melissa Arrighi, Town Manager.
Yes, I'm happy to direct this to Mr. de Blasio, who is to teach me pickleball. Barry?
You weren't supposed to say that. So yes, Michael, you can. Actually, it's multi-line. So you start with the tennis court and then you line, just like think of a synthetic athletic field where there's multiple sports lined up on it. The only problem with that is I can send you photos and we can look at it, but there is a lot of people complain of the confusion of the in and out lines, and there's a lot of lines going on. But yes, it is absolutely possible. You would actually line the tennis court and then line pickleballs within them, and
Yes.
just in a different color.
We did that at a local tennis court here, and the members were willing to accept the line confusion. So I'm just trying to bring a dual-use product to the town of Plymouth, not just one case.
Thank you for your
Pickleball
question,
falls out of
Mr.
that.
Withington.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Virginia Davis, Precinct 4, has a point of order which interrupts the meeting. Virginia Davis, welcome again. Good evening. And this is the town meeting preview coming to you live Thursday, August 6th. Preparation.
Hello.
Hello.
I just got my unmute.
Okay.
Okay, it was just a matter of, I guess, procedure. You can hear people every so often talking behind you. So I don't know what that is, but.
So I'll explain.
And I don't think I'm the only person hearing it, but you can just hear this chatter going on, probably in the studio, just to be.
No, Virginia
people
Davis.
to mute themselves so that we don't hear that.
Yeah.
It's disturbing.
The issue is with the town meeting member. When Mr. Withington spoke, there was background noise at his house, and we heard that.
No, not his house. Talking about the studio.
There's no noise in the studio, but we'll reevaluate that for Monday. But we can't control the background noise in your house. So that's a reminder to town meeting members. If you do wish to speak at town meeting, you need to try to be in a place where it's quiet.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Article 20, Kevin Canty, your recommendation.
In the event that Article 20 is voted on separately, the following will be read aloud. In a unanimous vote of 12 to 0 to 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 20. The focus of this bylaw is to ensure conditions are in place to minimize the negative effects of the demolition of the closed Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station, and all other large-scale industrial structures will be subject to this bylaw. Approval of the article will give the town some oversight of the demolition process and allow some control for adding conditions such as specific traffic routes and limiting travel during sensitive times, but not limited to minimize the negative effects of heavy traffic, noise, vibration, and dust to surrounding neighborhoods and the town in general.
Mr. Canty, and again, I received a text from a town meeting member asking why we're not monitoring people's lines to ensure they're muted. We are muting town meeting members until they're given speaking privileges, and we're told again by the PACTV that it was background noise from the speaker's home. Also to let you know that the town manager has provided an answer to question on Article 3 revolving account, the $10,000 spending cap for shellfish upweller revolving account. The money goes into this revolving account from those individuals who hold an aquaculture license from the select board to have an upweller in the harbor, essentially a lease of space in the harbor. The money is put in there, and we use the money for items such as buying shellfish to stock an open public area for harvesting or matching a grant. We're now going to move to Article 21. Mr. Canty, on your recommendation.
In a vote of 12-0 with one abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 21. Adopting this new section entitled the Stretch Energy Code will put the town of Plymouth on the path to become a green community and work towards energy efficiency and energy savings.
Motion Article 22 is withdrawn. Article 23 is withdrawn. Article 24, Mr. Canty.
In a vote of 12-0 with one abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 24. The Open Space Committee considers this 8.45 acre plot of forested habitat highly valuable and worth protecting. The parcel off Peter Road abuts 22 acres of protected open space land and is in the vicinity of 2 other lots that are under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission that provide wildlife habitats and opportunities for human recreation.
Thank you, Kevin Canty. And we have no motion on Articles 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29 at the night of town meeting. We would entertain a motion to dissolve the annual town meeting, which would conclude all business. Tonight, we're not going to do that. Instead, I've been requested to take another survey of town meeting members regarding whether or not to have a virtual town meeting. Now, on Monday, you'll be asked to vote twice as to whether to have a virtual special town meeting and whether to have a virtual annual town meeting. Tonight, for purposes of the survey, we will just take one vote as to whether or not town meeting members are inclined to have a virtual town meeting with remote participation. So you're going to see on your screen shortly an opportunity to vote on whether to have a virtual town meeting. Before we do that, I'm going to go to Ron Riley, who wanted to speak. Precinct 11, Ron Riley, did you have something you wanted to say?
Hi, Steve. Is it possible to go back and speak toward 9B?
Sure, go back to that and then we'll have everybody be thinking about how they're going to vote the survey. Go ahead, Mr. Riley.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a quick question on the sidewalks for West Plymouth. This is something I've been advocating for many, many years now. But at one point, the state was willing to put these sidewalks in along Route 80 because it is a state road. Are we, at this point, it's now the Mass Works grant that would be applied for that would do that. Is the town looking into this at all to see if the state would put these sidewalks in for us or apply for a grant?
I'll go first to Lynne Barrett, the Director of Finance, on a question of whether there would be an application for a grant. Lynne Barrett?
Hi, we'd have to check with the Department of Public Works on that to see if there is a grant available and if they're going to apply for it. I have not been aware of anything, but we will check with DPW and let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, this was a Mass Works grant that they're available for shovel-ready projects that create costs, and that's what it's all. These sidewalks are all about that. So,
thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Okay, we're going to be going now to the survey. We're going to be going to the V-Voter, and if we can call up on the screen, you'll see the vote is whether to approve a virtual special town meeting, and a yes, a no, and abstain. People have asked to explain it. I think at the outset we did explain what a yes vote would mean, what a no vote would mean. You can abstain. We're now going to take a minute and do this survey, and you can start voting now. This is going to then conclude tonight's town meeting preview. I want to thank everybody, in particular, special thanks to Nicole Manfrey, the Assistant Town Moderator, also to all of the staff here at PACTV, to the Plymouth Public Schools for their support and their particular support on Monday evening. We have a few town meeting members who will be at Plymouth North High School. Thanks to OTI for their support. Jeanette White, the administrator for the Advisory and Finance Committee, has been working tirelessly helping put together the motions. Also, thank you to all of the staff, the department heads, and other people who are pulling together this town meeting. And thank you to all the town meeting members who have been very involved in the planning and presenting motions and providing feedback as we look to try to move forward to Monday's town meeting. That concludes the voting, and at this time we will see the vote by precinct. You'll see 55 people voted in favor, 6 vote no, and 4 abstain. And again, this is only a survey. It is not binding on town meeting, but I want to thank everyone who attended. We're going to see this, the precincts again. In the end, we'll come back to precincts 1, 2, and 3. We're starting with 4, 5, and 6. You'll see the people who voted yes and the people who voted no. Again, in 7, 8, and 9, those who vote yes and those who vote no. And you'll see the list here. And we're going to continue on with precincts 10, 11, and 12. We have an abstention from the town meeting members who are participating this evening in the voting. And we're going to go 13, 14, and 15. We have a couple of noes. We have some yeses and an abstention. And we're going to come back to precincts 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to look to see how those precincts also voted. Some yeses, some noes, and some abstentions. So that concludes the Plymouth Town Meeting preview. Again, I'm Steve Triffletti, Plymouth Town Moderator, and we look forward to all of you joining us on Monday, August 6th. Town meeting members, you can log in early at 4 o'clock so that to make sure that you're all set. Please let us know if you had any problems this evening, and good day.